Welcome to Woo New, a show that explores healing and the expansion of our consciousness.
Where we explore all kinds of different energy modalities, therapies, and ideas that bring us closer to our collective liberation.
I'm Ellen, and I'm a journey work guide.
I'm Sam, and I am an integrative energy therapist.
And together, we are the co-creators of We Are All Daughters,
a quantum healing space dedicated to helping us reconnect to ourselves, our bodies, each other, and the universe.
Today is a really exciting day for me to introduce Brittany Lilligard, who I met through the Microdosing Institute when I took their 6-week course just a few months ago, actually. I think it started in the end of August and ran through September. And Brittany was my monitor. And so I got the opportunity to work with Brittany I think 2 or 3 times. We actually met one-on-one, and she guided me through the experience, which was so beautiful. And we'll dig into that today. But Brittany's also a breathwork facilitator. She's also a Wim Hof Method instructor, a yoga teacher, and obviously a microdosing guide. And yeah, she's also the Microdosing Institute's education and strategy lead. And so, yeah, I'm just really excited to introduce her here to all of you, and to have Sam also meet her and have this really beautiful and insightful conversation around microdosing and really her work, and also her incredible life living in a van as she travels around the world, or I guess around the drivable like land.
The drivable.
And so we definitely want to dig into her story there as well. So Brittany, thank you so much for being here with us, and welcome.
Thank you so much, Ellen. I'm really honored and excited to be here. And yeah, really excited to just chat with you and Samantha more.
Yay. So let's just dig in. And as always, we always like to kind of start in the beginning with how you even got into this healing work. What drove you and motivated you to become a breathwork? Actually, what came first?
Yeah, the chicken or the egg. Yeah, thank you. I think, like most people in this space, my journey started with my own personal healing journey. So I'll try and keep it fairly quick, but about a decade ago, a little longer, um, I was living in Chicago and I had a very traditional American urban lifestyle. I had a husband, a big house, a corporate job. Um, pretty traditional American life.
Mm.
And at some point along the way, even though everything sort of seemed well buttoned up and like I was making all of the using air quotes here, right moves in life, I started having panic attacks. And for people who have never had a panic attack before, one of the key characteristics of a panic attack is oftentimes it feels like you can't breathe. Feels like your breath has been taken away from you. And our breath being our life source, when it feels or is being interpreted that you can't breathe, it also feels like death, quite frankly. Your brain oftentimes can associate that experience with the experience of potential death. And that might sound exaggerated for some people, but a really deep panic attack can definitely take you there. And at the time, I was a personal trainer. I worked with people. I coached them on how to have better breath mechanics. So this whole thing was super curious to me. Like, why is my breath being taken away from me? And I also found it really curious that I taught people how to breathe better, yet I was having all of these struggles on the back end.
Yeah. I'm
Um,
curious,
yeah.
were there certain situations that brought on the panic attacks?
No, during this time, the panic attacks weren't necessarily tied with anything other than, many years down the line, I really realized that the lifestyle I was living, I was not living in alignment with my
Mm,
core values, which I didn't even know what my core values were at that time.
Yeah.
I was overworked. I had severe insomnia. I had chronic low back pain. I had irritable bowel syndrome. I had constant issues with my skin. I definitely weighed a bit more than I do now. And this was all at the young, ripe age of 25.
wow.
Wow.
So, um, in hindsight, I know what was causing them, but at the time, there were no specific triggers other than my lifestyle was not nourishing for me.
Mm,
Wow. That must have been so scary. I know I have some family members actually who suffered from panic attacks, and I know it's like they said that the first time they got one, they thought they were going to die. I mean,
Yeah.
they literally were like, "I'm dying. I don't know what's happening right now. I think I'm having a heart attack."
Yeah, well, what a lot of people don't realize, and we can loop back to this maybe a bit later in the conversation, but a panic attack is a form of an altered state of consciousness. And so, by exploring altered states, the very few times I have started to drift into a panic attack in recent years, I've been much, much better able to handle it because I have gained so much experience with altered states
Wow.
since my experience with panic attacks, when they first started happening over a decade ago. So
my mouth is like
lots of
literally dropping
I
parallels.
open.
know. I'm like, that's crazy. I had no idea.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the characteristics. I've experienced a lot of similar things with plant medicine as I have while on, like during panic attacks. It's just the context is different.
Hmm.
Right.
So dissociation. Um, Oftentimes, when I get panic attacks, the world around me gets warped in terms of the space.
Mm,
So it'll either feel smaller or bigger, which is also oftentimes an experience that people have on plant medicines. But in the right context, that can be a really fun experience.
Right.
right.
The panic
One that
attack
you're
can be
prepared
really
for.
frightening. Yeah. um, but so panic attacks were really my first entry point to understanding that something in my environment needed to change. And what really triggered this very deep understanding is I was actually at a fitness conference, and one of my uh, mentors, Dr. Perry Nicholson, he was talking about the body and he was talking about movement, but he made this comment that literally like smacked me in the chest. And he said, if you can't breathe in a position, you don't belong there.
Mm,
And he was
Wow.
talking about the body. You think about yoga and you go to yoga and your yoga teacher puts you in this like crazy twisty move and you can't breathe. And then your teacher's telling you to breathe and you're like, excuse me, what? So that's what he was talking about. But it really hit me because I was like, my breath is being taken away from me. I can't breathe. Maybe this is my breath telling me that something in my environment is not right for me. And then later
mm,
on in this same conversation, Dr. Perry continues to say, you can't get better in the same environment you got sick in. You have
oh,
Hmm.
to change
wow.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, me being me, I changed a lot of things. I sold my gym. I sold everything I belonged, or all of my belongings, got rid of my husband, and whittled everything down to a backpack and booked a one way ticket as far from Chicago as I could get, and ended up backpacking around the world for 2 years. And that really facilitated my nomadic lifestyle, but also facilitated my healing journey and sharing what I've learned with my own personal experiences with others.
Oh, wow. Can I
That's
ask, like,
incredible.
what were you doing at the time? Like, what healing modality were you working with at the time that allowed you to make these, like, pretty, like, earth-shattering kind of decisions for yourself? earth shattering in a good way.
Yeah, honestly, at the time, I thought I had all my ducks in order. I was a personal trainer. I worked out consistently. My nutrition was spot on. All of these things that we tend to think about as being the cornerstones of health.
Mhm.
And for me, really, there wasn't a modality that triggered the healing. It was desperately not wanting to feel the way that I had been feeling anymore, which was, to be honest, at the bottom of the barrel and oftentimes suicidal and having zero enjoyment in life.
Mm.
Um, and so, really, Dr. Perry's words, like, if you want to get better, you have to change something, coupled
Mm.
with me being so desperate to not live the rest of my life at the bottom where I
Mhm.
um, was really the catalyst for me making that big decision. And then, in addition to being inspired, no pun intended, that word does mean to breathe in, but being inspired to um, build more of a relationship with my breath and understand my breath better. Um, One of the biggest elements in my healing journey was taking rest. I
Mhm.
literally traveled and backpacked for 2 years. For the most part, did not work during those 2 years. I know not everyone has that luxury. I'm very fortunate that I had had a very cushy job and a significant amount of savings and was willing to travel very, very cheaply as well.
Mm.
Stayed in a lot of hostels and slept on a lot of couches. Um, but really being able to take time and rest for myself was massively pivotal in my healing process.
Yeah.
There's something so beautiful and profound about just the act of travel, displacement, putting yourself in a completely new and unknown environment by yourself, like,
Yeah.
and there may have been people coming in and out of your life, obviously you're probably meeting people through the experience, but it's so interesting. It's like I love these conversations because I feel like it's always like divine timing. But I found myself retelling my own sort of travel story to a client of mine recently, where it was triggered by a breakup. But I ended up, not 2 years around the world, which sounds like both incredibly life changing and challenging at the same time, but also for me it was two weeks in a car around the United States and
Mm.
by myself, and I didn't know what healing was then, I really didn't. I just was like, this sounds really good and I feel like I'm being called out to this. But I ended up doing it once a year for about 4 years, and it truly, I feel like, was the kind of start of my healing journey, though I did not know it at the time. So it
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and to your points, I think in order to heal, and just to give some context to this word, heal, it means to make whole. So to become
mm,
more of yourself, you have to spend time with yourself, which is something that a lot of
mhm.
us are scared to do. It's scary to go into those inner depths, oftentimes, but it is such a necessary part of going deeper into yourself, i.e., healing. Um, yeah, so I can imagine that, a 2 week solo trip, the impact that that could have on you.
Yeah. So what led you, I love that you've been talking about the breath and how, it's so interesting that that was like kind of the stripping away of your breath, the inability to breathe is what kind of motivated you to kind of start this journey, or this part of your journey, I should say. Um, what led you to become a breathwork facilitator and a Wim Hof instructor?
Yeah, well, so somewhere along the line of those travels, I so when I owned a gym, I was like a hardcore strength coach. I specialized in working with kettlebells, and anything outside of hardcore strength was like, for pansies, for lack of better words. Really how I felt at the time. Like, everything was about the more metal, the better, and 1 rep maxes. And so I found myself in Cambodia. And I remember there was this guy at the hostel I was at, and he had a pink ice cream cone tattooed on his thigh. I remember it specifically. And there was something in his presence where he just seemed so at peace. And I remember the second I met him, I was like, I want whatever he's on. And it turned out he had just spent some time in India in the Himalayas doing his yoga teacher training. And he talked so wonderfully about it. And yoga was never anything in my wheelhouse. It was something, quite frankly, I had made fun of before. But I was like, you know what? My 30th birthday is coming up. This yoga school had 1 spot left. A month in the mountains, spending time just on myself felt like the perfect way to ring in my 30th birthday. So I booked it. I went to India. And that's also where I really started having, let's say, positive, intentional experiences with altered states as well, but without plant medicine. I had the opportunity to really learn a lot about pranayama and other types of breathwork practices. And through those, really had my first deep experiences with healing altered states. I also experienced altered states through guided yoga nidra and sound healing. And that's what really got me interested in altered states and using the breath to induce positive or more intentional altered states, let's say. And then, after that, I met a Dutchman and, moved to the Netherlands. And it's really hard to live in the Netherlands and not hear about Wim Hof all of the time.
Oh my God. I am obsessed with Wim Hof's method. I do it all the time. It's incredible.
That's so cool to hear. So do you practice both the breathwork and the cold exposure regularly?
Oh no, you know what? I should say I'm very selective. I like will do anything in my entire life to not be cold. So I actually only do the breath work. But I'm so fascinated by this technique and how he does this. And I think it's so amazing that you got into that as an instructor.
Yeah. So I secretly have a new goal, Samantha, and that's to get you in an ice bath.
It does change your life. It really does. It's
I'm cold just thinking about it.
I know. It's amazing once you come out of it where you're just like, oh my gosh, I did that. And even just one time, and I don't know, there's something very empowering about it that I did not expect. And Brittany, you can definitely explain more.
Yeah, totally. So, similarly, I first got into the Wim Hof method mostly through interest with the breath work, and was pretty resistant to the cold exposure because similarly, I used to be the person who would like dread any type of cold anything, was constantly cold all of the time. But my first ice bath was also, in a sense, an altered state. I remember as soon as I was in that ice bath being incredibly hyper focused and aware of my own self and nothing else in the world around me. And it was immediate and it was beautiful and it was sacred. And there was a lot of growth that came with it. It was empowering. And what's really cool about cold exposure and your breath is that the cold is uncomfortable. There's no doubt about that. It never really gets comfortable either. It is still sharp and honest and bold and it's cutting. But if you can learn to control your breath in a situation as harsh as the cold,
Mhm.
your breath can become your best friend in any stressful situation that you encounter from here on out for forever. And I will also say that since my cold exposure practice, I used to be someone who would always get anxiety um, coming up on a high dose journey, always,
Mm,
without fail.
mhm.
I just kind of expected and always knew that it was going to be there and it was something that I was going to have to work through. Since I've been practicing cold exposure regularly, I have been able to have such a deep relationship with my breath that I
Mm.
can connect both with my breath and source at the same time, which this is getting into, what is the breath and the power of the breath. And I don't get anxiety anymore.
Mm.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah,
so amazing.
yeah. I never connected the two, Brittany, the cold exposure and the altered state of, that occurs when you're in that situation. And I think in my workshop that I did, I think we were in there for a minute and a half, which
Mhm.
feels like an eternity when you're in there.
Yeah.
Um, but I now that you describe it in that way, you're 1,000% correct. It felt like there was nothing else. Like all I was focusing on was inhaling and then extending my exhale as long as I possibly could. And
Really?
my coach was like, right next to me, guiding me through it. But the more I was extending my exhale, it's like there's a turning point in that minute and a half where suddenly it's like it truly is. It feels like knives are going into you. Like
Oh
the
God.
first the first like, I don't know, 15 to 30, there's pain, but I feel like there was a turning point where as I was able to be with my breath in that way, um, slowly it was like, I don't know, I started to feel warm is really what happened. And it's not that it got comfortable, but I was just like, I was realizing and so in the moment of like just being with my breath and like very much being with my exhale, especially. And just noticing how my body was
Mm.
shifting in that. And then when I got out, also noticing like how truly good it actually felt, like my body just felt like it was glowing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, and what's beautiful about an ice bath is it's actually very controlled. And for the most part, especially if you're doing it like in a bathtub and excluding open water cold exposure, which can have a few more dangers, but for the most part, in a controlled environment, cold exposure is actually very safe despite
Mm.
the discomfort that you feel. And the other thing about it is the second you're out of that ice bath, um, it's over.
Yeah.
Not true for a plant medicine journey.
Right.
Right.
So the more you can practice cold exposure, the more reps you get in this incredibly safe, controlled environment, the easier it is to bring those lessons and work with your breath in an environment that you have less control over, such as the environment created by communing with plant medicines.
I am so putting this into my practice. I had I had I have like a giant bathtub outside that's like kind of used for wood right now, but I feel like I need to empty that out and actually create a ice, you know, ice bath in there, especially since it's going to
Yeah.
start to snow. Oh my gosh.
I
Thank
am
you
in
so much for this.
full support of this. I'll even come visit.
Yes,
You
please.
guys, I'm cold just thinking about this, but I am so proud of you. That's amazing.
It's such an interesting, yeah, like I truly did not connect the two at all. And you're absolutely right, Brittany, especially like when you're entering into those first, like when you're doing a macrodose journey, I feel like, and for me, it's always been with the sacred mushroom. But when you're in those states, I feel like the beginning, like the beginning part of it, as you're sort of descending into the journey, is always for me the most anxiety inducing and scary. And while I think the more I've been able to macrodose and experience these non-ordinary states of consciousness in like an intentional way, that fear is slowly starting to subside, and I'm I I'm so grateful that you mentioned that you felt anxiety going into these spaces each time, because that's truly what I was feeling as well, until just my very last one recently, about a month ago. But prior to that, it was like always anxiety. And so I feel like there's something really powerful about the Wim Hof method, specifically in preparation
Mm, mm.
for these pretty these pretty intense journeys.
Yeah, that's super interesting because I I feel like I get that same sort of like anticipation, but I feel it as like excitement because I'm like, oh my God, anything could happen, and I just like can't wait to like go, go on this little fun date with my mushy dates, you know. Um, but it is super interesting because I have been called quite frequently in the past to microdose and Wim Hof, doing the Wim Hof breathing
Mm,
technique
mhm.
together. And that's one of my favorite things to do when I microdose, when I really want to journey deep, deep, and I'm not
Mhm.
doing a macro dose. So now I'm like, I have all these ideas swirling in my head. I'm like, oh, what would that be like if I was macro dosing and doing it at the beginning?
I mean, I'm
I
sure
mean,
I'm sure it will take you places.
yeah,
It takes me places microdosing with it. I have not actually utilized the Wim Hof breathing technique while macrodosing. Um, yeah, I'm sure it would shoot you off pretty quickly.
yeah. Some like I think I may have avoided it up to this point just because it's like I know how powerful it is with just a microdose.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like I don't know if you need that, but I do love combining the different modalities with the journeys. I think it's so, so powerful.
Yeah, and for many reasons. So I think especially when it comes to microdosing and utilizing breath work with microdosing, it creates this nice little circular upward spiral of support. And what I mean by
Mm,
this is, especially if people have not yet built a relationship with their breath, it is not uncommon for me to guide them through even just a basic breath awareness meditation where I will
mm,
ask them to sit and observe their breath and they just can't find it in their
mm,
bodies. They can't find it. It's hard for them to listen to it. It's hard for them to understand where it's most present in their body. But microdosing increases your sensitivity, it increases your awareness. So if
Mm.
you're the type of person that hasn't yet built a relationship with your breath, you struggle to find it and connect with it, microdosing and doing breath work can be really powerful for helping you start to connect and feel that relationship. And then eventually you don't need the microdose anymore at all for you to just know, like, okay, this is
Right.
my breath. This is where it is. This is how it feels. This is what color it is today. This is what emotions it's bringing. Those things will just naturally start to happen.
mm,
Now, in a circular way, though, your breath work is a really beautiful guide for your microdose.
mm,
So, microdosing, um, plant medicine in general, we consider non-specific amplifiers, meaning it's going to make bigger or stronger or louder whatever's in your head space, your heart space, your environment space.
Mm.
Knowing that, you can guide your experience by choosing your breath. And so it creates this nice little beautiful circular support network where your microdose can connect you deeper to your breath. And then you can consciously choose to adjust or control your breath to take your microdosing experience into the direction that you want to take it into, um,
I
which
love
is
that.
just beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been working with some people through this Moondos container that I've been facilitating, and each week we've been doing breath work together. And I invite them to microdose 30 minutes to an hour before we gather. And I, for the purpose of this particular container, which is, it we this is like in the midst of Scorpio season and like the eclipse portal, so there was a lot of releasing happening. But I just found that the presence of the sacred mushroom with the breath work and vice versa just made each of these journeys so, so potent, like
Mm.
incredibly so. And I just have no words for what I'm kind of witnessing coming through each person's journey.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think it's so nice that you're creating a space for people to experience um, those two tools together because they're beautiful on their own. And I feel like you can
Mm.
find a lot of support for microdosing. You can find a lot of support if you want to start a breathwork practice. Um, but as of yet, I think there are fewer opportunities for people to really truly deeply explore both of those practices together. So I can imagine that the container that you're holding has been a really nourishing and beautiful one.
Yeah, it's wild, and I'm always constantly just like surprised, I think, at what is coming through. And I'm curious, how did you find microdosing for yourself?
Yeah, so my microdosing practice started by searching for tools to continue to integrate a therapeutic high dose experience that I had.
Mm,
Mm.
So really fortunate that in the Netherlands, psilocybin truffles are legal. So it is actually quite easy to find and access uh, fairly easily guided and therapeutic experiences. So when I first moved to the Netherlands, um, I was very interested in how my plant medicine journey might be different if I had a therapist helping
mm,
me very intentionally go into the space and hold space for me during and work with me to integrate. And it was truly such a game changing experience for my relationship with plant medicine and what it could do for me. And that journey was so incredibly deep and intense and healing that it required significant integration for months and still even I mean this has been years now, years after I'm still integrating things from that session. But microdosing popped into my space as a way to continue to connect with that experience and integrate what I had learned from it, so
mm.
through
Yeah.
microdosing. Yeah.
That's super interesting. Were you doing protocols at the time to
I
integrate?
Yeah, I was following the Fariman protocol.
Mm,
So dosing every 3 days. But aside from that, I I will say that that very first cycle and even the first few cycles after that were not as intentional as they have since become, especially
mm.
now that I've been working in the microdosing space.
Right.
Yeah.
And how did it hold you in your integration work with this macrodose journey?
One of the biggest ways is that it allowed me to stay connected to the journey.
Gotcha.
So a lot of the sensations and feelings and insights and other wordless experiences that came up for me, I was able to more deeply and continually revisit by microdosing afterwards. Um, and that kept the experience a little bit more alive for me and allowed me to lengthen my integration process. I think oftentimes with especially really deep high dose journeys, while they can be beautiful resets, oftentimes there's so much that's handed to you that
Mhm.
once you come back sort of into our real space, it can be really challenging to hold all of that all at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
microdosing really supported me in lengthening the process so that I could
Mm.
start to pull out pieces and integrate them, but still stay connected to the whole journey, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Yeah, it does. Did you begin microdosing right after your journey, or did you actually give yourself a little bit of time in between
I
to just
think
reset?
Yeah, I think that after that first journey, probably about a month afterwards is when I started microdosing.
Mm.
And that journey was really, really, really deep. I think I was floating, honestly. I think I was floating for like 2 or 3 weeks after that journey. So I'm
Wow.
not sure how prolific microdosing would have been in those first few weeks. I think I really needed space to just ground.
Yeah.
And then once I found that space to ground, then had the opportunity to reconnect.
It's such an interesting, I haven't really thought about microdosing in order to help my integration from the macrodose journeys. And I think you're really opening my eyes up to the power of, like, I consider it almost like two different modalities in a
Hmm.
sense, you know? And so, yeah, that's super interesting. Like, I definitely want to start to explore that even for my own personal work. Um, how did this lead you to the Microdosing Institute?
Yeah, so funnily enough, my connection with the Microdosing Institute was a direct result of the pandemic. So prior to my connection with them, um, all of my plant medicine exploration was um, for myself and then holding space for friends here and there.
Mm, mhm,
I never necessarily had the intention of working with it any further than that. And um, I had booked for myself personally a the Mind Foundation, which is an organization in Europe. They have this really beautiful educational experience called Beyond Experience, actually,
mm, mhm,
and it is an in-depth um, training on integration.
mm, mhm,
So I had booked that for my own self personally, and to also learn how to take those tools and apply them to breath work. And that retreat was supposed to happen March 2020. Of course, it got canceled and it got rescheduled for August 2020. And during that time, I had been working full time in the health and wellness space, and I had completely lost all of my work because
mm,
gyms, studios, etc., were all closed, social distancing. Um, so I had no work for 6 months and was starting to get a little desperate for income. And
mhm.
then this Beyond experience happened in August, and I happened to meet Hein, the co-founder of Microdosing Institute.
Oh,
And it's
wow.
almost like divine intervention from the universe. But he had been talking about some data that they had been sitting on that they needed to be analyzed, and they didn't know how to do it. And in my former life, I was a data analyst. So I just sort of threw myself out there and was like, I can totally hook you up. Like, let me do this project for you. And then the
Mm.
relationship was just really good, and it kept growing from there, and has sort of turned into my role today, which is the primary decision maker and educator for Microdosing Institute.
Wow. I love how the universe always delivers, you
I
know?
know.
It's like it's as soon as you're open to it, it's just like, here you go.
Yeah, seriously. And you're clearly meant to be here. And,
Hmm.
my experience having you as my monitor for the 6-week program, um, you know, it was really interesting for me to enter into this program because I had been microdosing for a while. And so I was, not crazy experienced, but I was an experienced microdoser. And I had also been working with people and kind of teaching them what I knew based off of my own personal experience. But I wanted to really understand. I think what I was looking for was some structure. I wanted to really look at how I can better serve the people that were coming to me for guidance with microdosing specifically, and also how I can, perhaps deepen my own practice with microdosing and deepen my relationship with the sacred mushroom through this particular kind of practice. And so I think what I appreciated from this program was the fact that um, it was so structured. It was so structured to the point where I was like, "Whoa, this is actually like almost a little overwhelming for me, you
Mhm.
know?" But then I think you were such a like I'm so grateful that I got paired up with you because I feel like your invitation to take what works and leave the rest, I think was really what I needed to hear. And I really truly, I mean, everybody's given this incredible daily journal with all of these different ways to track your experience from the physical to the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual. And it gave me sort of a foundation to really kind of observe and analyze my experience, even though I didn't necessarily use the journal like and enter in every single checkbox and every single, entry. But it I really, really appreciated the very methodical approach to microdosing that the Microdosing Institute provides.
Mm.
Yeah, thank you for that. And it's interesting. One of the things that we battle with a lot and have some internal controversy over is microdosing doesn't have to be structured. And in
Yeah.
fact, if you look at indigenous cultures and how they use microdosing, it is far from structured. But the reality is that in the society that we live in, we don't have a lot of the attunement to our environment that indigenous peoples oftentimes do because of
Mhm.
their lifestyle and the society that they live in and the types of community support that they have that we oftentimes times lack.
Mhm.
Um, so I sometimes struggle with over structuring, but at the same time, I honestly think in a society where we are oftentimes so disconnected from ourselves,
Mhm.
learning those rules and frameworks first allow you to break them to then have as little structure as possible in your practice.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, I think that's so interesting because I feel like a lot of people go the opposite direction, but there's so many layers to it, and there's so much that you can access and really like sit with when you're aware of the things that if you don't go through a program like this, you just don't know you don't know, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think to Ellen's point, one of the things that we focus a lot on in this program is all four dimensions of our being. So the
Mhm.
physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. And oftentimes people are really heavily connected to one of those
Mhm.
and really self ignorant about the others.
Mhm.
And just by having it pointed out to you time and time and time again, you start to build or I should say, you start to rebuild those connections to all of those different dimensions. And then all of a sudden, your entire world and being and process of healing becomes so much more colorful and integrative than um, just focusing on the one that tends to resonate with you most. So there is a lot of structure, but a lot of that structure is um, it's repetitive in nature to help you rebuild connection to yourself. And once you have connection
Mhm.
to yourself, the sky's the limit. That structure doesn't need to be there anymore.
Yeah. I think that's what I appreciated most about it. It was, um, yeah, it was the framework that it provided. And, for me, I think because I have stepped away from more of a corporate existence, like a career that demands certain like uh like mental presence. I don't even know how to say
Yeah.
that. But
Yeah.
like I'm much more in my body these days. I'm much more in feeling, feeling into my emotions and
I
trying
get
to
that.
navigate my life. So for me, even like considering the mental side of this, like the focus, the awareness, how is my, like attention and all that kind of stuff. I was like, oh yeah, there's that part of it too, which I think for most people in this world, because of the jobs that they have, it's really important for them to also observe that. And even, like right now working with my brother, I feel like there's a lot of that, he's starting to um, observe in a more conscious way. And that's
Mm.
really, to me, I feel like the importance or the power of this. It's I find like in my sessions with you, and again, Microdosing Institute broke it down in such a beautiful way where we had, I think it was three different sessions every other week with a monitor, somebody that you're assigned to. And so I luckily got assigned to with Brittany. And so we met one on one, and you know, our sessions were less about, what are you feeling with the mushroom, and more about just what is occurring, what are you observing. And I
Mhm.
think what I'm realizing with this particular modality, and even with the people I work with, is that you're bringing them in this conscious and very ritualistic way, and you're honoring their presence and their spirit within your body. But the work that you're doing is really just cultivating a deeper and more conscious awareness and observation of your experience through your life. Is that fair to say, Brittany?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so. A couple of things coming to mind right now. One of the questions that I frequently get, people will have these beautiful experiences during a microdosing cycle. And one of the well accepted um, protocols around microdosing is that it should be cyclical in nature. So you microdose for a few weeks, you take a few weeks off, maybe a few months off, and then you microdose again. And people will have these amazing experiences and say, "But I don't want to stop. Why do I have to stop?"
Mhm.
And like like anything, it should be cyclical. If we think about how mushrooms grow, even and where mushrooms grow, they're not available to us during all
Mm.
periods of the
Mhm.
year and at all times. In fact, they are most prevalent after the rain, which I also find, interesting for our own um, connection with them. They are most impactful for us after rainy periods. But then there need to be periods where you live life
Mhm.
without um, needing them. They're not supposed to be there for us with us all of the time. And
Right.
so honoring that is a really powerful and important part of the process. And I think that goes back to what you were saying, Ellen, that it teaches you how to live in your day to day life
Mhm.
um, with more intentionality, even when you are not communing with them.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it really is more about just growing that ability to be with yourself again. Kind of going back to the beginning of our conversation and travel, like the awareness that you have of your experience through these four dimensions, mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual. I think so many of us are so in the minutia and the weeds of our lives that we don't lift up to be aware, to really observe what we are truly experiencing. And so our life is just kind of passing us by. And so I feel like that really is the beauty of microdosing with the sacred mushroom. It's allowing yourself to kind of slow down and begin to develop that sensory awareness again
Mhm.
of your life. Yeah.
Yeah, it's in getting a little esoteric um, on this, but at the end of the day, if you truly believe and accept that everything is connected,
Mhm.
building that deep connection with yourself is building a deep connection with everyone else and to everything else at the same time, right? It's all interrelated, and mushrooms are really powerful for they are the most powerful. I mean, if you even just think about them and how they interact with our environment by nature and this mycelial network and how they really truly are the connectors of everything in the world, that's the gift that they have to offer to us is by deepening our own internal connection with us, we are naturally deepening our external connection with everything else, everyone else, with nature, the universe, source, whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
Um, and that eventually segues to the present moment now. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I also really appreciate what you said about the fact that you're not meant to be microdosing 24/7, nonstop, 365
Right.
days a year, you know? Um, there's something really beautiful about this medicine that I find super profound, and it's the fact that, like, the more you microdose and not in succession, like I was just saying, but the more you work with them, the more you walk with them through microdosing, the less of the medicine you actually need because you're actually learning how to observe. You're developing that sensitivity. You're resensitizing your body, coming back
Mhm.
into alignment with, your essential self. And like, it's, they don't need to be there anymore. And I remember one session that we had where I was telling you that I was at the DMV and I think I had microdosed like
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
zero
I remember you
point
telling me about that day.
I came down to see you, Sam. I think that's why.
Yeah.
And like I microdosed at like such a small amount, like 0.05 grams. And everything was so insanely heightened during that trip that I was just like, what is happening? And Brittany was just, it was so awesome. Like I had my session like very close to that experience. It may have even been the next day or something.
Yeah, I think
But
it was.
yeah, and she was like, "Well, maybe you don't need them anymore right now." Maybe that's their way of telling you, like, it's time to like maybe step away. And I ended up not finishing that protocol, and because that was the best advice and guidance, I think. And it felt really good. As soon as you said that, I was like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, they're with me. Their spirit
Yeah.
is with me. Like my sensitivity is heightened right now, and yeah, I really don't need that extra support anymore. I
And
can
what a
let go."
beautiful confirmation too, to know that like because your sensitivity is heightened, that you're already carrying that medicine with
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
through the other aspects of your life, and just to like be able to hold that and acknowledge it, is that's super powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny with this 6-week program, the majority of people that join us for the program, at least so far, have more experience with microdosing. And we have this calibration week at the start to help people find their sweet spot. And
Mhm.
oftentimes, most people that come into our program are pretty resistant to that. And they're like, I know my sweet spot. I've microdosed like 10 times. I know it. It's this. And what almost always happens is they will have their dose through that calibration process, because once they're actually like sitting and listening, they're like,
Mm,
oh, I've
yeah.
actually built up more sensitivity to this. And then also the program's only 6 weeks. The first week
Mhm.
you don't microdose. The second week is a calibration process to find your optimal dose. So you really only have 4 weeks of microdosing. And it is not uncommon at all for people to not microdose that last week. And
Mhm.
it's mind blowing to me time and time and time again. And I think to the participants themselves, that they can have so much impact with these medicines if they step into it with such deep intention in
Yeah.
such a short period of time.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah. It really doesn't take long at all. And I think in our wiring of this like modern world and where it's like, more is better and like,
Hmm.
consistency is better and all that kind of stuff, it goes against that. You know what I mean? It's really interesting. And there's just like lessons packed into it in a very meta way, of just even like the experience of microdosing, let alone what the sacred mushroom is bringing into your system, and what they're teaching
Right.
you. Um, I have a question for you, Brittany, that I've been pondering on my own for it's been coming up for some reason a lot over the last couple of weeks. Not surprising through this eclipse portal, but
Yeah.
um,
Whew.
and the question is around education
Mm,
and around, you know, like, and I'll just share, like, in my experience, with the mushroom, I feel like a lot of my education is coming straight from the medicine themselves
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
and straight from, they're really teaching me what and how they want me to be in relationship with others and in support and guidance of others. And, I get a lot of questions about like, what's a good program I can do to um, teach me the skills that I need in order to hold space for others. And I'm finding myself really resistant to that question now
mm,
because what's coming up for me lately is that like in some of the more like like how do I even say this? Like I don't want to say traditional models because it's not necessarily traditional, the Western models of education where you get a couple of letters behind your name and you get that kind of education. Not to say that that education is bad, but I
mhm.
feel like in these spaces and working with this particular kind of medicine, what's most important is your ability to be grounded and to hold your heart open in a way that allows you to be with somebody. Um, it's like I'm having a hard time articulating this, but it's like it's like you're loving somebody in this space, right? You're holding them through and keeping your nervous system regulated, and they're co-regulating with you in this space. And I feel like particularly with macrodose journeys and facilitation that in that sense, that becomes more important, like your relationship to your breath becomes more important than a lot of this knowledge and information
Yeah,
about the medicine. Does that make sense? It like
yeah.
I'm curious what your
Yeah.
So,
perspective is.
yeah, so this is a great question, and I also my answer, of course, will be a little bit biased. We did just release a 10-month microdosing coaches certification program for the institute,
Mhm,
and we have gone back and forth a lot on the intention and the purpose and the value and the need and the why. Um, you are absolutely right. The best thing you can do as a space holder working with these medicines is to work with the medicines yourself
Right.
mm,
and
Yeah.
to learn how to connect with your own intuition. With that being said, there are a couple of things that, because of our societal structure, are missing from that. And one of the
mhm,
biggest things, for example, is community. In
mhm,
more traditional and indigenous uses of these medicines, you've been working with them for years with other people around you, supporting you and learning from them, and learning maybe not necessarily by them saying, do this or don't do this, but learning from their energy,
mhm.
learning from observation. And that is significantly lost in our
Yeah,
Western world. So, one of the things that
Yeah.
we often hear with people in the plant medicine space is simply, I feel like I'm doing this alone,
mm,
which is such a shame because there are so many of us on this path. And community is one of the most vital things for not just healing, but also for managing our energy as space holders. Um, you said something that was really important, and that's learning to stay grounded as you're holding space while working with these medicines. One of the things that can keep you grounded is community support.
mm,
um,
mhm,
so in this program, in my opinion, one of the most powerful elements of it is that there's just, at least right now for this year's cohort, there's 30 other individuals coming together saying, I choose this path as well, and immediately giving you that deep sense of connection and community that is oftentimes lacking in this space where so many of us also have to work a little bit more softly and underground and in the gray area.
mm,
Um,
mhm,
so that first and foremost, I think, is one of the absolute biggest benefits. Um, but then also, one of the things that I grapple with a lot and that we're trying to work with our students on a lot and will be a continuous conversation in this program, we can learn a lot by how Indigenous peoples use these medicines. But at the end of the day, most of the clients that we're supporting live and exist within frameworks and societies that are so different from how indigenous cultures are supported. And again, a lot of that comes down to community, right? Like if
Yeah.
someone needs deep healing in an indigenous setting, they're not just doing the plant, they're not just doing a plant ceremony with a shaman, they're doing it with the entire community.
Right.
That
Right.
does not exist within our framework. So there are elements of education that come into play that I think help manage risk, but also help collectively and slowly but surely start to shift some of those societal constraints, but they have to be done very intentionally and with slightly different tools. And that's really what we're
Mm.
trying to bring together for our group that is going through this education.
Mm.
Whoa, that's super powerful. Because even as you were talking about it, I was thinking about like so often in indigenous cultures, when someone's going to go on a journey like that, it's not just like I'm going to show up one day and do this journey, even with the full community. It's weeks of preparation,
Yeah.
weeks of intention setting, weeks of, and then the integration process is continual, it's ongoing. And it is really interesting that you bring up that point, and that's giving me a lot to think about. This is really inspiring me to continue my education around this and building that community.
Yeah. And finding the right kind of container to learn,
Right.
I think Brittany, your comment about like community, that community piece is like, I think it's something we take for granted, but it's something that is like just as foundational and fundamental to learning how to work with this medicine
Hmm.
as like individually or personally walking with this medicine and
Right.
doing these macrodose and microdose journeys. Um, yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to communicate on it, because I do think it's it's been interesting on the back end. The number of comments that we've gotten of people being like, oh, you're just over corporatizing this, and yes,
Mm,
like just what we need, another organization like putting too much structure around these medicines, and I can't believe you're charging for this. And the reality is that as much as we want to start to make societal shifts, we still have to work within the frameworks that we have.
right.
Um,
Hmm.
and there is a lot of need for a lot of people to have connection. It's not even, again, it's less about the education and it is more about the connection,
Yeah.
and in the community. And even again, just modeling these things, looking at indigenous cultures and how they utilize this in plant medicine ceremonies. It's never just one ceremony holder
Right.
Hmm.
and
Right.
a
Hmm.
group of people. It's usually several ceremony holders and a couple of people supporting the main ceremony holder, because the energetic expenditure is so extreme. So you
Right.
have this entire community of people behind the space holder who's, guiding the space for the journeyers. Um, and yeah, that community, just that connection, it's so important.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and
Yeah.
that understanding too of the energy expenditure, and not just for the journeyer or the space holder, but for everyone in that community together, because it's like everything is energy and everything is connected. And it's like I have so many people coming to me and asking me about my own personal macro journeys, and the first thing I tell them every time is like, okay, you have to understand everything is energy. You're going to
Hmm.
feel that, you're going to experience that, and yeah, it can be a really difficult thing to experience alone. Like there are, like as you said, there can be some risks in that. And so just to have, even following a journey like that, someone to sit down with and you know just speak with and commune with around your experience, and helping you to integrate and just talk about what you felt, what you went
Hmm.
through.
Hmm.
It's like so much of that is lacking because I feel like I know so many people who go into this or this kind of experience and they're like, I just want to party, I just want to have fun, and which is like, to each their own. But I'm also like, okay, but you don't like. We have to respect the medicine.
Yeah,
In my
well,
heart, I'm always like, oh,
and even what I say in this situation, it's all about intention. And
mm-hmm.
Mm.
a very valid intention can absolutely be, I am stepping into this space to connect and embrace playfulness and joy with some of my friends.
Yeah.
But that intention still needs to be there. Even
Right.
if it's
Right.
just this brief little moments, it takes your recreational use from recreational to intentional, even though the environment may be the same, like
Right.
there is nothing wrong. I really honestly don't think there's anything wrong with saying, I'm going to go camping with a few friends and we're going to hang out with mushrooms and connect even more deeply because of that, or I'm going to go to this concert and I'm going to take a mini dose because I want to tap into some flow and just really allow my body to become the vibrations of the music. Like there's
Mm.
nothing wrong with any of that.
Mhm.
It's that moment right beforehand where you just need to step into it saying, this is the intention.
Right. And I think the lack of that intention is how so often people end up coming back and saying, oh my God, I had this terrible trip.
Yeah.
Mm.
Like,
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
just don't even know what happened. I was so scared.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
Yeah.
intention is everything.
Yeah. Absolutely. And we also, I mean, to your point there as well, the 6-week program, we spend the first 2 weeks setting and
Mhm.
refining intentions before anyone
Yeah.
like stepping into communion with the mushrooms.
I love that.
It's so like not I mean, it's so intentional, like this intention setting. It's I found that that was really I loved that part of the 6-week program with Microdosing Institute. It was like I think I think intention setting is something that we all kind of think that we know what it is, but I
Mhm.
think the way in which that program guided us, it was like, oh no, that's just the first layer. Like you can go
Mm-hmm.
deeper into this intent. Like, why do you want this particular insight? What is it that you want to feel? And I think the emphasis on feeling, like what's the frequency you want to bring into your body, I
Mhm.
think was such
Oh,
a huge game changer for me to like realize, oh yeah, that's really what the intention
that's the
actually is,
stuff.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's what really differentiates an intention from a goal.
Hmm.
An intention is really feeling based.
Yeah.
And it's tough for a lot of people because we're not used to a being deeply connected with our feelings and sensations in that way. But we're also frequently taught that we don't have control over guiding where we want and how we want to feel,
Hmm.
um, which is really unfortunate. Um, but yeah, that feeling piece is really the big difference, in my opinion, between just setting a goal and
Hmm.
actually stepping into an embodied intention.
Yeah, and just even what you just said, there is a difference between a goal and an intention. And I find that our world right now is so goal based.
Hmm.
And so even learning the difference between the two and realizing like, no, we are feeling and embodied beings, like I think that in itself was such a game changing nugget.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our last question, I mean, we always love to ask this question, and we've covered so much ground, and I just cannot say thank you enough for your time and your energy today. Um, but because you have traveled so much, because you've learned so much, and you've walked with these medicines for so long, I'm so curious what is that big piece of wisdom that you kind of hang your hat on now that you just cannot live without and that kind of guides your life.
Yeah, I think um, it's having unwavering trust in my breath,
Mm.
truly. Your breath is such a beautiful thing, and that's it. It's so honest with you.
Mhm.
Um, it's just creating an environment in which you're willing to listen. And even though I've definitely created a lot of space where I hear my breath loud and clear often, it doesn't necessarily mean that I always listen to it. Sometimes we fight. Um, but yeah, I definitely would say for me, at the end of the day, everything comes down to my connection with my breath and believing in it and having unwavering trust in its capability to guide and support me.
Mm. Beautiful. Also, how can people work with you?
Yeah. So right now, most of my personal capacity is in supporting um, the operational side of Microdosing Institute. However, I do facilitate the 6 week program. So if people want to work with me directly, the 6 week program is a great place to start. As well as that is a prerequisite for our coaches certification program. And that is where a lot of my energy is going these days, is supporting and mentoring um, microdosing facilitators. Both of those programs are available on our website, the information if people are interested. And then every now and then, occasionally, for a little bit of play, I do offer virtual breathwork sessions and in person Wim Hof workshops. And they are sporadic, but they're all always shared on my Instagram page. So that's the easiest way to sort of stay updated with my personal offerings.
Awesome. We'll make sure to include all of that in the show notes. And do you have the dates for the next 6 week program with Microdosing Institute?
Yeah, I don't have the exact start date, but it is, I believe, the second week of January is the next one.
Okay.
It is that one is almost full, and then we are starting to open up registration for um, one in March, and that one we are actually going to have two. We'll have one for US or North American based community members, and then we'll have one for European based community members. So, one of the things we've struggled with is finding times for our global audience.
Mhm.
So, in March, there will be a little bit more accessibility for different time zones. And that one,
Oh,
I believe,
awesome.
starts the first or second week of March.
Ah, incredible. Yeah, I had to wake up at 7 a.m.
I
It's
know. And
6:30.
plus, most of the people in the US actually join us from the West Coast because that tends to be where most of the psychedelic friendly regions are.
Mhm.
So I always feel so bad for our West Coast joiners. So in March, the January one will still be at 7 a.m. Pacific, but the one in March will start a little bit later. So for those of you who aren't early risers, get in on that March one.
Awesome.
I love it. This has
Thank
been
you so
so
much.
awesome. Yeah, I've been really looking forward to connecting with you for such a long time. You know, Ellen has raved about the program, and I've been following your social media for quite a while. So this was really special. Thank you.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you so much. And I still look forward to getting you in an ice bath at some
It'll happen. It'll happen.
point.
I can
Awesome.
try
And
anything
maybe
once, I suppose.
oh, absolutely. And to be honest, all it takes is once, and then generally you're down the
You're
route.
hooked. I love it.
Yeah.
Music for Woo New is composed by Adam Miller.